Hi everyone, my name is Christina and I'm a public health registrar. Welcome to the Bolder Healthier Community Champions Cost of Living webinar. Thanks so much for attending. This webinar will be recorded for those who cannot attend and also for future use and reference, as Ben said. So there will be 4 webinars in this cost of living series. In addition to this one, there'll be a youth, workplace and plus this week and next. So today's is the Community Champions webinar, and information here is intended for use by the Community Champion strand. However, a lot of the information regarding rising cost of living is transferable to the other strands as well. So what is the cost of living crisis? It's definitely a term that we've heard more and more throughout the last year, and definitely more in the last couple of months, as it's a term which refers to an ongoing situation in the UK from 2021 onward. It is a term which can cause anxiety, worry, and uncertainty. It refers broadly to the cost of everyday essentials like energy and food rising faster than average incomes. There is also a growing gap between what people have and what people actually need for a decent standard of living. So we know that rising costs present the most significant challenge to living standards for many, many years, especially after the social and economic uncertainty which followed the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that the rising cost of living is affecting and will continue to impact everybody. In July 2022, 91% of UK households reported that their cost of living had increased in the previous month. This was up from 62% in November of 2021. These costs are mainly attributed to food, electricity and fuel costs. Unfortunately, this crisis will impact the poorest UK households and those already spending a significant proportion of their income on food and housing costs. Financial forecasts predict that real household disposable income in the UK will continue to fall in 2022 to 23 by 2.2%. And this reflects the biggest fall in living standards since the mid 1950s. So what is going up? Seems like everything is going up. So we have presented some of the key costs affecting individuals and households. However, this is not an exhaustive list, and there will be additional ones that are impacting different communities. So average travel costs have increased by 45%. We know that rent and mortgages are all going up. So social housing rent has increased by 4.1%, private rental prices by 3%, and then mortgage interest rates have also increased by 0.5%. Water bills and energy bills have also increased, so water by 1.4%, and energy household bills have, as we've seen in the news, risen 54% in April, and then a further rise of 27% in October. So this can all cause a lot of anxiety and worry for households, as I've said, which are already spending a lot of their income on household and household prices. So childcare annual costs have also increased. So this is nursery places, after school clubs, things like this. And that's 16% between 2018 and 2022. And finally, personal goods and services for a single working adult per week have increased by 49%. So this includes food, household essentials, drink, and things like that. We know that our communities are taking action because of these rising costs, and this information is taken from the census 2021 and relates to the West Midlands population. So 6 in 10 people are spending less on non-essentials, 5 in 10 people are using less gas, electricity in their home, which can have a great impact on health and well-being. 5 in 10 people are cutting down on non-essential journeys in their vehicle. That's impacting social participation and even getting to work. And 4 in 10 people are spending less on food shopping and essentials. Worryingly, 1 in 10 people are also using more credit than usual. So things like debt is a really important issue that's coming out of the rising cost of living. So this slide presents some of the impacts of the rising cost of living to our communities. Again, not an exhaustive list, and some effects will be seen more greatly in different communities. So fuel poverty, this relates to cold and damp living conditions, which increases the risk of respiratory and cardiovascular illness and can worsen existing long-term conditions as well. This can lead to turning down the heating, cold-related deaths, and ill health, which may impact older adults living alone or those in a low household income. As I mentioned, housing prices are increasing, so the rising private sector rent costs and mortgage rates may lead to forced evictions and debt, and there is a risk that more people sleep rough for the first time because households struggle to make ends meet. The social and mental health impact will be far-reaching and widening. A shame over requiring financial or food assistance, as well as financial pressures, will impact this. Rising costs for everyday social activities increase the risk of loneliness and social isolation as people choose to not pay for travel and activities. So debt, as I mentioned, is a really big problem as a result of the rising cost of living. It's the greatest impact for those people already on low and unstable incomes or those relying on benefits. Not meeting rent or mortgage repayment obligations will create financial pressures, which will affect decisions is crucial, such as choosing eating over heating. Um, Air quality as well is an issue, so more people may be relying on wood solid fuel burners due to the cost of electricity and gas, and this affects local air quality. It may also in the short term exacerbate respiratory and cardiovascular conditions. The high prices in food and energy mean people may think twice about what they are buying. This leads to tough decisions, which sometimes mean people may be tempted to skip meals with less money available to spend on healthy food. Being unable to afford sufficient food leaves people malnourished. So it is a shifting landscape, as Ben has mentioned, and the impacts of the rising cost of living will be seen for months and even years to come. The national and local responses also as a result of this changing landscape, shifting and changing as well. So we recommend staying abreast of the local response by regularly checking the council's website for updates on the range of support being offered for residents over the coming months. So we've talked about the varying costs of rising cost of living on our communities, which will be seen in the short and long term, again ranging from fuel poverty, housing income and debt problems, air quality and social and mental health impact. You will see impacts specific to the communities that you live and work in. The rising cost of living will impact those poorest households, those already spending a large proportion of their income on housing and food. Those who are most vulnerable will be impacted the hardest. So this information is from the Office for National Statistics 2019 Deprivation Index. 22.2% of the population in Birmingham was income deprived in 2019. 28% of children live in income deprived households, and 26% of over 60s are income deprived. So it does affect the whole range across the life course. This table highlights those areas in Birmingham which are amongst the top 1% of deprived neighbourhoods nationally. We know that deprivation is concentrated in the ring around the city centre, but there is also significant deprivation across the city, so particularly to the east of the city centre and also in the outer city to the southwest and northeast as well. So this brings us to our main call of action for Bolder Healthier Community Champions. And that's really broken down into three things. So the first is talking. So talking about the impact of rising costs of living helps reduce shame and stigma and helps raise awareness. The second is connecting. So connecting people through web pages and signposting to services and support. And finally, feedback to us. So we want you to feedback where more help is needed so we can continue to improve the support for citizens. So the first step, talking. As I said, talking about the impact of rising costs of living openly in your communities will help raise awareness of this issue. This might take place in a variety of places and with different members of your community. So you might find yourselves having considerations in your community with friends, neighbours, colleagues and family, which will in turn reduce stigma and shame in the community. You can use open questions, which help reduce shame and stigma and also allow people to open up about which areas of cost of living crisis are impacting them the most. So some of these are some of the situations that could arise, but again, there'll be lots more. So I'll just run some of them that are through the screen. So is there an older neighbour living alone and struggling with excess cold during the winter? Are they aware of benefit entitlement and any national government payments to support with energy? Are you speaking to a mum at the school gate and they're having to make difficult financial decisions regarding eating and heating? And could you signpost them to council or national support? Do you know an unpaid carer who could find themselves in debt as a result of their caring role and their financial situation? And do rising rent costs mean that somebody that you know may be at risk of housing insecurity and as a result their family as well? Are financial troubles causing chronic stress and anxiety for a colleague? We know that the social mental health impact of rising costs will have short and long-term impacts. And would it be beneficial to signpost somebody early for mental wellbeing support? Is rising childcare costs for a family friend with a young family impacting their decisions around leaving employment and therefore increasing their risk of financial insecurity? Is a neighbour struggling with food costs, and could you talk to them sensitively about food banks? Again, the issue of shame and stigma and making them aware that there are lots of people in this situation, and it's nothing to feel embarrassed or shamed about. And again, is that, could there be a single parent, a mum or a dad, aware of what benefits they may be entitled to? Thanks, Ben. So how can you provide that brief support in everyday interactions? So we would recommend using open questions with the ask, assist and act model. So this is an example for budgeting. You could start off by open questions. So do you have any worries relating to money, budgeting, borrowing or debt? Or how confident are you about budget setting, sticking to it and how to save? It's an open question which allows somebody to respond naturally and honestly. Take the next step of assisting, seeing if that person would like assistance in the way that you can provide. So you could ask, inform them that taking the time to manage your money better can really pay off. It can help you stay on top of your bills and save money each year. Would they like some helpful information on managing their money? And then finally, you can act. As we'll see in the following slides, there's a lot of resources out there for a variety of the impacts of rising costs. So in this sense, budgeting, there's the Money Helper service set up by the government, which offers free and impartial money advice and guides to help improve your finances. There's support provided over the phone and online, so live web chat and WhatsApp. So that means that people can access the support at any time, so it'd be useful for them to know about it. So the next example, which you could provide brief support in your everyday interactions for debt and borrowing. So again, using the Ask, Assist and Act model, you can really provide that help and signposting to useful resources. So again, you ask open questions. So do they have any worries relating to debt? If you need to borrow money, have you considered the cost of borrowing and where you would source this from? So where you feel comfortable to have these conversations, you can then further assist by asking them if they would like to have information on free and recommended debt advice service. So that's available nationally and locally. And two of the examples there, but there are many more examples that we have in the later slides, are signposting them to National Debt-line. Again, they have a telephone number which they can access, and Step Change, which also provides advice which is impartial and personalised to each individual situation. And the final example we've given here that you can utilise in your everyday interactions is around non-urgent mental health support. What we would say is if there is an urgent mental health episode or issue, then you should recommend somebody go and speak to their GP. But for those non-urgent situations in everyday life, asking open questions, which allows that person to open up, such as how are you feeling at the moment, what's been happening to you recently. You may then wish to ask some further ones, so ask them specifically around why they think they might be low and would they like information on services. And similarly to the last slides, you then move on to the ACT phase of this. So you can use the range of services we've highlighted in this presentation. Some examples of those are Mind, which is a national mental health charity which has resources available. The NHS also has a range of self-help tools, and Birmingham City Council has a range of wellbeing resources which are available locally. So we've gone through talk. Now it's about connect. So that's the next key message that we would like to impart for the Bolder Healthier Community Champions. So the hope is that these next slides can be used as a resource. There are a lot of links on here, so I won't highlight them individually, but I will talk about the main headings. So if somebody is in need of immediate short-term crisis support, we would recommend that you refer them to the Birmingham City Council's local welfare provision scheme, which has a telephone number. But there are further local sources that you can refer them to based on their situation, such as Birmingham Solihull Women's Aid, the Project Birmingham, and then again food banks or further financial assistance as well. So Birmingham City Council's contact centre is open 9 AM to 5 PM Monday to Friday. So connecting somebody to council support can be really useful to help them navigate the many issues they might be facing. So they might require more than one thing that with support. So support with emergency food, benefits inquiries, council tax inquiries, or help with accommodation and homelessness. The contact number can be found there, and there are also 2 walk-in advice centres as well. So there are a lot of links on this page, but essentially they all relate to connecting somebody to support with their bills. So there are UK government schemes, which people may not know that they're entitled to. There are also local schemes, which you can find the link there to the Birmingham City Council website. And then thinking about other bills like phone bills, water bills, there are also some resources there that you can connect people to. So connecting somebody to support with income and debt is very important. Again, there's UK government information, such as checking if somebody's on the minimum wage, getting support with savings, support with interest payments, or a mortgage or home improvement loan. And the Money Helper service, as I've mentioned on the previous slide, provides free, confidential, and impartial advice. Debt advice is really important. So there are a range of services you can signpost somebody to. What we would say is we wouldn't want a Bolder Healthier champion to act as a financial advocate or to receive any financial information that's personal to the individual, but you can signpost and refer somebody to expert support. So this is sort of a miscellaneous slide. So you might find some support here that's specific to different individuals you're talking to. Generally, we would say having a look on the Birmingham City Council's cost of living support page. You can become familiar with this. This has a range of different resources that you can look at in terms of money advice and advice and support on benefits and housing. Mental health and wellbeing support is really important. And again, the council has a page for wellbeing resources. Highlighting to somebody that they might also be able to save on travel through the National Rail Card. And then families with young children who may be pregnant may be entitled to Healthy Start vouchers for help to buy healthy food and milk. You can also signpost somebody who may be in need, some place in the day to go to if they're struggling with social isolation or rising energy costs. So a warm welcome space in Birmingham might be useful to them. So we thought we'd end on a case study, but again, this isn't a prescriptive case study, and you will be interacting with a lot of different people in the community, and hopefully some of the messages here can be translatable to those interactions. So we have Barbara as a bold, healthier champion and enjoys keeping up with her neighbours. She has an elderly neighbour called Jill who lives alone across the road. Barbara catches her for a chat one morning to find out how she's getting on. So through an open conversation, asking open questions, Barbara is able to find out that Jill has been really struggling with energy costs. So she's tried to keep the heating off and warming herself with hot teas. So in the first instance, Barbara is able to offer her some signposting advice, the warm welcome spaces that they can go to during the day, and has been able to highlight one that's close by, which may be able to help. So again, being able to talk about openly about the impact of rising costs, Barbara is able to reassure Jill that many people are facing the same issues, so there's nothing to feel shameful about. So Barbara says it's good to talk to somebody, and sometimes they can feel embarrassed about not being able to pay the high energy costs. So again, being able to signpost an older person to government support that they are entitled to but may not know about would be really helpful. So such as the winter payment and the pensioner cost of living payment. So you can ask openly about whether they would like to know more about that, and then signpost them to those national resources. And finally, to the last call of action message. So we would really like you to feed back to us as and when you have these conversations and interactions so that we can improve the help that's needed and improve the support for citizens. So please get in touch on that email address so that we can collate that feedback and put it to action. So we've run through these key messages. So I just wanted to end on the final sort of call to action that we've spoken about. So what is the role of Bolder Healthier Champions? We would like Bolder Healthier Champions to take these 3 steps. So number 1, talk to people about the impact of the rising cost of living. And then secondly, connect people to support through web pages and services. And then finally, feedback to us where more help is needed. Thank you so much for attending. That concludes the webinar. I don't know if we have time for a Q&A or whether, Ben, you prefer any questions to be sent by email.